Today's honorary doctorate recipient, Mr. Stephen Huddart, believes philanthropy is not just about giving, it is about helping society evolve. Until his retirement in 2020, he was president and CEO of the McConnell Foundation, Canada's second oldest private foundation. Established in 1937 to support Montreal's civic institutions, including McGill, the foundation has evolved to focus on accelerating the systemic change needed to address the climate crisis, inequality, and Indigenous reconciliation. Mr. Huddart has said, we can't advocate for anybody else changing the way they work if we're not prepared to do the same ourselves. Indeed, during his nearly 2 decades with the McConnell Foundation, he was instrumental in helping not only that foundation, but the wider philanthropic community embrace the problem-solving tools of social innovation, social finance, and social enterprise. Under his leadership, the foundation grew its impact investing portfolio, making investments that secured social and environmental outcomes. He helped create Social Innovation Generation, SIG, a unique public, private, and philanthropic partnership that encouraged social research and development, policy innovation, and the creation of innovation ecosystems. Grâce au leadership de Stephen Huddart, les organisations philanthropiques sont maintenant plus inclinées à revoir l'harmonisation et l'investissement de leurs actifs pour mieux soutenir la transition sociétale et à investir dans la capacité de la prochaine génération à relever les défis sérieux de notre planète. Under his leadership, the McConnell Foundation entered numerous partnerships with Indigenous-led organizations and initiatives, including Cindy Blackstock's groundbreaking work on behalf of Indigenous children, the Chinta Center for Research and Learning, the Winnipeg Boldness Initiative, the Moose Hide Campaign, the Art and Reconciliation Program at the Canada Council of the Arts, and Raven Capital Partners, the first Indigenous venture fund in Canada. He played a key role in the creation of the federal government's $755 million Social Finance Fund, which, when launched later this year, will help Canada address the challenges of the coming decade through cross-sector collaboration in the deployment of capital and financial expertise across the social sector. Mr. Huddart holds a Master of Management degree from McGill University, and we are proud to call him one of our own lifelong learners. Although his career arc defies traditional convention, he has worked as, among other things, a documentary filmmaker, a geophysical observer, a museum curator, and a natural food store manager. He has brought a thoughtful altruism to everything he does. At the British Columbia SPCA, he helped introduce innovations in humane food labeling, animal-assisted therapy, and humane education. He also co-founded Vancouver's Alma Street Cafe, a jazz venue with an active community presence, leading the local Chamber of Commerce to name him Business Person of the Year. Stephen Huddart's exemplary career has inspired positive social and environmental change across the Canadian charitable sector. Proof positive that the best investments yield dividends that cannot be captured on a spreadsheet. Mr. Chancellor, I present to you Stephen Huddart so that you may confer upon him the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. Thank you.
I would now like Dr. Huddart to address the audience.
Bon. Chancellor McCall McBain, Principal and Vice Chancellor Poitier, Chair of the Board Panda, members of the Platform Party, proud family members and guests, and especially Spring 2022 graduates of the School of Continuing Education. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. I am honored to be recognized by my alma mater with this Doctor of Laws honoris causa degree and to be invited to deliver this convocation address, recognizing that this is an important moment in your lives and also in the greater world around us. Let me add that it's wonderful to be here in person and not sitting at home in front of our computers where I'd be competing for your attention with our family cat. Warm congratulations then to each and every one of you. The resilience that you have demonstrated completing your studies while balancing family, work, and community commitments during a global pandemic equips you for times ahead. Most of you have come here from other countries to begin a new life in Canada. Some are from Indigenous nations who have been here for millennia. You are all part of the first graduating class of McGill's third century. And if we had time to hear your stories, I'm sure that we would find inspiration and reason for hope. Now, the ancient Greeks had two concepts of time: chronos, which is sequential and marked in clocks, calendars, and lifetimes. Chronos enables us to plan our next move and also gives us the long view. It is your instrument for accomplishing things like raising a family, advancing a career, or building a business. It also allows society to establish important targets, such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which 193 countries have signed and agreed to do their best to meet by 2030, or the Paris 2050 target of keeping global warming to less than 2 degrees, for which, as we know, time is short. The other concept of time is kairos, which links past, present, and future during periods of transformation. It describes a deep shift in principles, mindset, and outlook, and the bold actions that follow. Below turbulence, beyond polarization, gateways to kairos include love, beauty, justice, and peace. And yes, grief and joy. And so as part of this ceremony, I invite you to call to mind the family and friends who could not be with you today. And let us also remember those of past generations whose love, hard work, and sacrifice enabled us all to be here. We acknowledge their victories, even as we take up the work that they left undone. As inheritors of struggles for justice and achievements in many fields, we today are fellow stewards of a planet in peril. Hopefully, through the lives we lead and the contributions we make, we will become good and worthy ancestors for future generations, acting with compassion and a moral compass, a sense of personal agency, and of our collective power and responsibility to shape the future for the better. Comme la plupart d'entre vous, je suis arrivé à McGill plus tard dans ma vie. J'avais presque 50 ans quand je me suis inscrit dans un programme pour les professionnels en milieu de carrière dans le secteur bénévole. We learned about leadership in conditions of complexity and about social innovation, about how changes occur in the systems that we live in and depend upon. Things that we take for granted today, like child labor laws, cooperatives, publicly funded healthcare, gay rights, and more, were once social innovations. After graduation, I went to work at the McConnell Foundation, which had funded this program, and I thus had an opportunity to apply what we were learning to the work that the foundation supported, and to some extent to the field of philanthropy itself. Now, I'm sure that you've heard the saying that if you give a person a fish, you feed them for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, you can feed them for a lifetime. Bill Drayton, the social entrepreneur who founded the global Ashoka Changemaker Network, adds that today we have to restructure the fishing industry to ensure that it is sustainable and operated fairly. He could have been speaking about the changing role of philanthropy. Philanthropy is conventionally expressed as donations to alleviate poverty and support for public institutions such as hospitals and universities. It is important to the recipients and open to everyone. It is not the prerogative of solely the wealthy and the privileged. I commend your commitments of time and money to causes that reflect your values and concerns. Dans cette période d'incertitude économique, les organisations au service des plus démunis ont besoin de notre soutien plus que jamais. However, philanthropy is not limited to acts of charity. It is also about seeking justice for those, justice for and with the exploited and those whose rights are being ignored. More than money, it takes moral courage to challenge the status quo, and to do so as allies takes trust and humility. One of the things that I'm most proud of in our work at the McConnell Foundation is a series of grants to support a McGill classmate, Cindy Blackstock, an Indigenous leader whose organization, the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, which challenged the federal government's underfunding of the education and health needs of Indigenous children on reserves before the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. It took 9 years, but they eventually won the case, and today tens of thousands of Indigenous children enjoy improved services as a result. During a webinar early in our relationship, Cindy challenged me publicly on my use of the phrase, Canada's Indigenous peoples. She was right. I was wrong. The phrase is paternalistic, and the relationship between Indigenous peoples in Canada is not about one belonging to the other. Constructive criticism is welcome and useful among allies committed to shared goals. But criticism by itself is a poor substitute for working together on solutions. Many people are caught in systems not of their own making and that produce suboptimal or even destructive outcomes. As my friend Niamh Leonard, who just graduated from McGill's law school, puts it, work hard on changing systems, but go easy on the people within them. Philanthropy's next frontier involves collaborating on systems changes that no one sector can accomplish on its own. One foundation-supported initiative, the Transition Accelerator, is assembling coalitions that are working on large-scale decarbonization of Canada's energy, mining, and manufacturing systems. Here in Montreal, the Trottier Foundation has launched a pan-Canadian competition to design the best impact investment funds. And together with several other foundations, including McConnell and the Fondation de Gros Montréal, they will invest $90 million with the winning entrants. In Manitoba, grant funding supported the design of a new profession, Indigenous doulas, who accompany vulnerable mothers through their pregnancies, the birth of their babies, and their first few months of life. As an alternative to social workers removing babies from their mothers to put them in foster care, the doulas provide culturally informed coaching, peer support, and access to community services. A social impact bond followed, with foundations and others investing $3.5 million to test the intervention at scale. If successful, the government will repay the investors with interest. And early results are so promising that the government has often opened a social innovation office to develop many more social impact bonds. Maintenant, la plupart d'entre vous n'allez pas travailler dans la philanthropie organisée, mais vous êtes la preuve vivante que de meilleurs résultats sont possibles. If you are in the private sector, you are observing a deep shift around the social purpose of the corporation. As TELUS Chief Social Innovation and Communications Officer Jill Schnarr has said, having a social purpose is no longer optional. It is a license to operate. L'innovation politique dans le secteur public accélère aussi. In times like these, it's natural to occasionally experience grief and even despair, as old ways are left behind and the new ones have yet to take hold or be sufficiently visible. And social media can often reinforce the sense that things are just getting worse. But grief gives way to joy as we take up the task of working together in what President Fortier called communities of caring. This time of Kairos is deepening every day, guided by love of people and planet, nurtured by beauty, driven by the hunger for justice and the desire for peace. Humanity has entered a period of transformation. You are graduating into this time, for which we are grateful, and we wish you every success. Félicitations, bon courage et bonne chance. Merci.